Welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. We are so excited, ladies and gentlemen, that you have joined us today in this virtual meeting, regional webinar that is focusing on the performance of our Southern African countries in the Biennial Review Report. We've got the CAADP targets, and there's a second Biennial Review Report that shows us how the region and the continent as a whole is performing. And we are looking at how we improve that performance through the transformation of irrigation systems in the Southern African region. My name is Dr. Njongenhle Nyoni. I'm the Capacity Strengthening Manager at FANAPAN, the Food, Agriculture and Natural Resources Policy Analysis Network. And I will be your moderator today, together with my colleague, Stembile Momakamba, Tembi, who is our Director for Policy Research and Analysis. And we are excited today, as I mentioned, that we have been joined by different stakeholders from across the globe. We've got our colleagues, it's morning, this part of the country, this part of the world, but it's actually in the evening in some parts of the world, for example, in Australia. Without further ado, let me welcome our CEO, the FANAPAN CEO, Dr. Chilidzi Madzivandila, who is going to deliver the opening remarks for our dialogue. Say, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nyoni, and your co-program director, Ms. Momakamba. First, let me acknowledge our distinguished delegates. Let me start with Dr. Leah Ndongo, who is representing ASEA in Africa. Prof. James Pittock, who has been our project principal investigator from Australia National University. We have got our invited guest, Dr. Inga Jacobs-Mata from INGWI Southern Africa, Mr. Andrew Takawira from GWP, and last but not least, permanent secretaries from the Project Focal Countries, which are Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. We also then have a delegation from the African Union Commission. I nearly forgot them. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the webinar that we are hosting with partners today. Thank you for joining this important regional webinar today. Our focus today is on improving the performance ratings on the Southern African region through the African Union AU CAADP Malabo Declaration Biennial Review process. Specifically, the topic here of interest is transforming irrigation systems in Southern Africa. As FANAPAN, we are convening this webinar with our partners, namely from Down Under in Australia, the ANU, the University of Southern Australia, CSIRO, which is the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. Here within the region, which is SADC, we do have got the National Institute for Irrigation of Mozambique, at the University of Tanzania, and also ICRISAT from Zimbabwe. Let me start by saying that our successful collaboration during the implementation of our Transforming Small-Scale Irrigation in Southern Africa TISA project, which was funded by ASEA, is one of the main reasons why we are gathering here today. Apart from successful collaboration, FANAPAN is here because the objective of this webinar aligns perfectly with our mandate, which is to promote the African agricultural transformation agenda. And first, the TISA project enabled us and our partners to conduct a co-created research. Second, it is imperative that we translate the research evidence generated from TISA project into policy options. Third, which I must emphasize, is that we need to package our combined experience and lessons from our TISA project into tangible options for the benefit of both state and non-state actors within the region. Fourth, but not list is that in the same spirit of the collaboration, our partnership should also seek to address the identified capacity gaps at individual level and also at institutional levels. Ladies and gentlemen, I can comfortably state that our strategic focus as partners is informed by the objectives of the continental and global frameworks. For the webinar today and for Africa, the CAADP Malabo Declaration has become the pivotal to the continent's agricultural transformation agenda. And since 2014, when it came into effect, the biannual reviews reporting that has been happening has stimulated a renewed sense of urgency amongst our national, regional, and continental governments. And I think we really need to move with this momentum and to ride the wave so that then we manage to transform the African agriculture and food systems. Against this background, ladies and gentlemen, let me emphasize that then we are convening here against the backdrop of a changing climate. And for Africa, we know that then most of the agriculture is rain-fed and is undertaken by smallholder farmers then who have got limited financial and other resources. And also then they are plagued by frequent dry spells and droughts. And irrigation offers an opportunity for one, to increase crop production and productivity, two, to enhance sustainable intensification, and three, to improve resilience to climate shocks and disasters. These are amongst other challenges that the farmers are facing. We know that Southern Africa is experiencing increased rainfall variability. There is therefore a need to enhance irrigation scheme effectiveness, efficiency, and sustainability. And for this to happen, I will need to emphasize also here that we need to address institutional and system rigidity that inhibits flexible water delivery. Also, we need to address water governance issues. And two, we also have got to address the user behavior-related challenges that contribute to wastage of water. For practitioners who are researchers and development practitioners, there is also a need to apply systems thinking, trans and multidisciplinary approaches. The point in case here is that we need to attend to water research in a nexus manner. For example, there is an emergent nexus here, which we'll normally call it WEF, which addresses water, energy, and food. I know that there are other nexus issues that are related to water, but the WEF one is the one that is emerging now. And when we think about water challenges, water research opportunities, let's also then think about other related components that also affect water usage and also opportunities that comes with it. Coming back to the theme of the webinar, and to meet the CAADP Malabo Declaration targets, especially commitment 3 and 4, and respectively dealing with ending hunger by 2025 and also halving poverty through agriculture by 2025, smallholder irrigation schemes need to transition from lower to higher yielding systems, which are profitable and sustainable. Most importantly, they should provide food security and by and large, then provide positive nutrition and health outcomes for the growing population. The evidence that we've generated here from the TISA project shows that then expanding irrigation potential can improve agricultural productivity on existing land and extend growing season throughout the year, which will reduce poverty, food insecurity, and also then reduce the import dependency of the continent. Against this backdrop, coming to conclusion, this session presents an opportunity for us then to establish practical strategies that can be implemented to transform irrigation systems within the region and the continent. However, such strategies should be accompanied by significant investment, and this investment more often are lacking. And then we need to provide evidence to make sure that then the evidence that we're providing brings now to the fore investment that will enhance and transform African agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you and I wish you fruitful deliberation. Program Director, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much to our CEO. That's very significant. The issue of ensuring that we provide the evidence that then gives direction in terms of where and how to invest. Irrigation has potential to transform our agriculture development, the development agenda, beyond just looking at management of water only. Thank you very much for those opening remarks, Sam. I would like to invite Dr. Leah. Dr. Leah is from ASEA. She's the regional manager for the East and Southern African region for the ASEA program in Africa. She's responsible for providing strategic oversight for the ASEA program. Leah, over to you. Sorry, your mic is muted.
Sorry, yeah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Dr. Nyoni. Thank you so much to you and to the organizers for the opportunity to participate in this important regional webinar. Dear researchers, dear agricultural stakeholders and colleagues involved in the TISA project, what a great pleasure to welcome you to this regional webinar. The Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, ASEA, prides itself on being a broker of research partnerships. We fill a niche not addressed by many donors within the agricultural research for development space. We work to ensure Australian science can be combined with local knowledge and implemented effectively in the field. We depend on the quality and the durability of partnerships between our scientists and farmers, researchers and industry, government and academia, like the ones represented here today. And for more than 3 decades, ASEA has supported projects that mobilize this expertise to deliver sustainable development outcomes in our region. We note that irrigation has significant potential to contribute to food security in sub-Saharan Africa. Still, many irrigation schemes are underperforming and returns on investment in irrigation infrastructure are low. That is why we commissioned phase 1 of the Virtual Irrigation Academy via project in Malawi, South Africa and Tanzania to develop a system of continual social and institutional learning to improve the profitability and sustainability of irrigated farming. Additionally, we initiated the TISA project to support activities with irrigation schemes in Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe to be self-sustaining. We have been impressed by how the TISA project has impacted the lives of smallholder farmers. For instance, recently, I learned how the soil and water monitoring tools boost the livelihoods of smallholder communities in Tanzania with a 65% reduction in the amount of time that they use to irrigate. And there are many more such transformational examples you will hear from the Mozambique and Zimbabwe cases. These collective examples allow farmers to focus on other agricultural tasks, such as improving farm management, leading to increased food security and improved farmer livelihoods. And the deliberations in this meeting will go a long way to fulfilling the Regional African Union Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, CAADP, Malabo Declaration targets, especially that of ending hunger by 2025. So in conclusion, on behalf of ASEA, I thank the TISA project team, including FANAPAN, for organizing this webinar and all the other stakeholders for participating. I wish you all a successful meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ndungu, for those remarks, and thank you for confirming that you are impressed by the results that we're getting from the TISA project. It's very encouraging, and we hope that we will be able to scale up and scale out as well these important interventions beyond what we have done so far in the respective countries and across the African continent. May I now take the opportunity to invite Jamie. Jamie is the principal investigator for the TISA project. He is based in Australia at the Australian National University, and he's going to give us a keynote on scaling up, scaling out TISA interventions to improve the performance of member states in the region, looking at the CAADP Malabo targets. Jamie, over to you.
Dr. Madziv Handila, thank you so much for FANRAPAN's efforts in hosting this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to have this opportunity to discuss enhanced irrigation management with you. I'd like to thank the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research that supported this project and the research partners from the organisations represented on this slide. In this very brief overview, what I'd like to do is talk about why we chose to do research with our partners in the field on irrigation in Africa, some of the key lessons and some of the findings in terms of future directions. So clearly, irrigated agriculture has a very important role to play in Africa in terms of providing food security for a growing population, in terms of adaptation to climate change, in terms of improving economic outcomes. Already there's a lot of potential for irrigated agriculture in Africa, as indicated by the green shading on this map. However, for many of the existing irrigation schemes, there are major failures in terms of something like a third of the command area of the existing irrigation schemes not in production, in terms of very low yields from the existing irrigation schemes, and often excessive water being used in the irrigation schemes at the expense of downstream farmers and other users. And so our Transforming Irrigation in Southern Africa project, or TISA, has been undertaking research for the past 8 years, looking at now over 40 irrigation schemes in Zimbabwe, Mozambique and Tanzania. And we have two very simple interventions that we have made with these irrigation schemes. The first is providing simple to use tools to farmers so that they can monitor the moisture and nutrient content of the soils. And so that enables the farmers to tell when their nutrient levels are too low and to add compost or fertilisers. And it also enables the farmers to tell how much moisture is under the dry ground on the surface and when they need to add more water. As a result, many of the farmers learn that the soil already has enough water and that they don't need to add more. And so this is a technical intervention that aids farmer learning and helps the farmers dramatically increase their crop yield. But increasing the crop yield doesn't necessarily lead to greater profits. And so we've had a second intervention to magnify the benefits from using the tools, known as agricultural innovation platforms. And so the idea here is that we have brought farmers together to ask them to envisage where they would like their community, their farms to be in 5 years' time, to look at where their community is now, and to ask what are the barriers and the opportunities to move from where they are now to where they would like to be. Generally, those barriers or opportunities involve talking to other stakeholders in the agricultural value chain, such as seed and fertiliser suppliers or crop processors. And once those links are made and communication is established among the stakeholders, they can agree on win-win outcomes. And at that point, the innovation platform may become redundant. Here is an example from one of the Zimbabwean irrigation schemes of that visioning exercise. On the left is the situation at the time the farmers prepared this map, which was of a major irrigation scheme where only around 20% of the command area was in production. On the right is how the farmers envisaged their scheme in the future. What I think is really interesting about this diagram is the vision that the farmers had for improving their irrigation scheme by doing things such as fencing out the crops from livestock, of undertaking crop livestock integration, and looking at further processing of their produce to increase the benefits that they receive. And so after the first 4 years of the program, we began to see some really significant benefits that relate to the sorts of targets that the CAADP Malabo Declaration seeks to achieve. So I'll just give you a small number of the examples. So more than half of the households involved in these schemes changed their farming practices, whether they had the tools in their plots or not. And a very large number of these farmers reduced their irrigation frequency, which not only used less water, but also saved a lot of labour that those farmers could then use for other livelihood activities. Crop production increased dramatically, and so the majority of the farmers involved have found it easier to purchase high quality inputs for farming, things like fertilisers and seeds. And for those farmers who changed their farming practices, the overwhelming majority increased their crop yields very substantially. When we look at the farmers' livelihoods, a large portion of the farmers dramatically increased their income as a result of applying these sorts of interventions. And when we asked the farmers what do they do with that extra income, they talked about spending more of it on enhancing their farming processes, on their children's education, and on purchasing more and more nutritious foods. We saw a number of very valuable changes, societal changes as a result of these interventions. And so the amount of conflict within households fell quite substantially. We put this down to two things. One is that with the irrigation farmers using more water efficiently, there was enough water for all of the irrigation farmers in many of these schemes, including those at the tail end of canals who often didn't have enough water to complete crops. Also, the increased income meant that many households could achieve their goals from farming, such as paying children's school fees. A really important indicator in terms of the potential to sustain the irrigation and stop these irrigation schemes from breaking down and being needing to be rebuilt is that the majority of the farmers in these schemes were participating more in maintenance of the scheme infrastructure. A really important one in terms of the government offices, we wondered if by empowering the farmers, the role for government officers would diminish. But actually, we found that it increased because the farmers were being more innovative with their farming practices. They needed more information, and actually this increased the demand for the technical support from agricultural extension and other government staff. And another positive outcome was that these changes provided more opportunities for greater gender equity in leadership in these communities. This diagram summarises many of the positive changes that occurred and gives some indications as to why these two interventions have worked synergistically to achieve greater change. And so you can see at the top there, there's the learning from the soil monitoring tools leading to less application of irrigation water, which decreases conflict. It decreases the amount of labour needed for irrigation. That enables more effective farming for farmers to undertake other livelihood opportunities. That all increases incomes. That enables the farmers to improve their agricultural systems, and it results in other positive economic benefits such as hiring non-family labour and spending more money in local communities. So lots of really positive, reinforcing loops in here, a cascade of positive changes in these local communities. This is one example, and actually one where the soil monitoring tools weren't used. This is a rice growing irrigation scheme in Tanzania called Magos. And there the innovation platform was formed in 2014, and the local Chamber of Commerce helped the farmers write a business plan. And that business plan involved the farmers cooperating to buy inputs in bulk and lower the price, to grow fewer and more profitable rice varieties, and to collectively market this smaller number of rice varieties in greater demand. Importantly, they improved their water management so that more of the farmers in the scheme received enough water to grow crops. The irrigation organisation established a machinery hire business so the individual farmers could hire out machines like tillers by the hour. They prepared a business plan and received funding to set up a rice mill to add value to their crop, and then similarly to build a rice warehouse so that they could store that rice in order to sell it when the market prices were higher. So part of the question in this webinar is, from these interventions, about scaling out and up the innovations. This is how we've proposed trying to scale out and up the innovations in the past few years. And so one way is to engage more at the level of district and provincial governments and with national government authorities, such as many people on this call, in order to see those innovations adopted programmatically at greater governance scales. And the other way is to help the farmers at the irrigation scheme scale transfer their knowledge and experience to other irrigation schemes, transfer their innovations. And we're currently measuring the extent to which this scaling out and up is working. One of the lessons that we see emerging from this is the need to move towards more circular food systems, where waste products from the farming system, such as crop residues and animal manures, are used to enhance the irrigation schemes, where more products are processed locally to generate socioeconomic benefits and reduce waste, leading to less local import of processed products and more exports of products manufactured in the area. And this is one example of where this has happened outside of the TISA project in Zimbabwe, where work on establishing effective goat markets has led to irrigation and livestock integration, producing livestock fodder that improves the quality of the goats, and by further processing with the mobile abattoir depicted in this steel container, there's greater value added to the products. And so again, you've got this circular reinforcing system of positive interventions. So to conclude on the question of scaling out and up to meet the CAADP targets, I think that the lessons from our research in TISA are that we can get some really positive results by empowering farmers to use water more wisely, to increase crop yields and increase cooperation among the farmers and other stakeholders, such as with these soil monitoring tools. But that one intervention alone in a complex system doesn't lead to greater profits and other benefits. So we also need to help farming communities to develop a vision for their future, engage the rest of the agricultural value chain to increase their profitability, which provides a driver for ongoing innovation and improvement. And the agricultural innovation platforms did this. We can further improve profitability and create more self-sustaining systems by adding further processing opportunities. And interventions such as crop livestock integration, as seen as this irrigation scheme in Zimbabwe, are an example of that. And so the last point I want to make is that if we want to support better irrigation in Africa, it doesn't always require hundreds of millions of dollars of new infrastructure. But the interventions that we have made here are relatively cheap. You know, these tools are not that expensive. The innovation platforms are a fraction of the cost of rebuilding failed irrigation scheme infrastructure. But to achieve these changes, it does require governments to work with and listen to the farmers, respect their knowledge, and build on their ideas and experience. With that, I will stop talking, but there is some more information available here. Thank you, Dr. Nyoni.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you for that insightful presentation. And it's quite fascinating every time I go through the benefits and the impact that this project has had, the TISA interventions in transforming the livelihoods of people, beyond just the management of the water resource, looking at the incomes, the way that they are increasing, looking at access to technologies and ensuring that there's access to markets, there's empowerment of women. And those are some of the key targets when you look at the biennial review report, which are our targets as a continent, as a region, as countries, to ensure that there's more transformation. So the food systems approach is also being shown here. It's being evidenced. We are showing the evidence of how we can deal with the complex issues in terms of improving the livelihoods of smallholder farmers in our respective countries. Without further ado, may I invite Mure from the African Union They're the custodians, the African Union are the custodians of the CAADP framework, and the framework are related to irrigation and irrigation targets in the continent. And he's going to share some of the key issues related to irrigation and looking at what we have also, what has also been presented from the TISA project and how we can then take forward the transformation agenda related to the irrigation systems and the agriculture development agenda as a whole. Murray, over to you, sir. Murray, you can go ahead. If you're speaking, your mic probably is muted.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Dr. Johnny. Thanks for inviting African Union Commission to this webinar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues. It is a pleasure to be here. I think the presentation I'm going to make this morning has been simplified by the previous presentation. It's really drawing from the presentation of Jeremy that I just heard. Thank you very much. I'm actually presenting the framework, the African Union framework for irrigation development and agricultural water management in the continent. The issue at stake, the issue of irrigation and agricultural water management. In fact, I was just looking at the map that was shown in the last presentation of Africa and the poverty zone. If you do an overlay of the map of Africa, the areas that are water stressed and the areas without irrigation infrastructure, what you actually get is the poverty and the hunger map of the continent. This goes to show the importance of irrigation and agricultural water management in reducing poverty and hunger in the continent. The framework was produced by African Union Commission. As a continental organization, what we do at AUC is to provide support to member states. And the idea is that whatever support we are providing in terms of policy guidance, in terms of advocacy, in terms of capacity building, the member state will uptake these in a sense to improve their development issues. The issue of reliable access to sufficient quantity and quality water in agricultural production has been stressed over and over. Definitely, agriculture is the largest extractor of water in all over the world. About 70% of water is used in agriculture. So there's need in a time to really regulate how agri use water and also ensure access of sufficient quantity and quality water to agriculture. A 2016 IMI, International Water Management Institute report estimated that 29% more irrigated land is required or will be required by 2025, which is less than 4 years from now, to sustain food production and to reduce poverty in the continent. The African Union heads of states and government, through many declarations and decisions, have also stressed the need to improve irrigation and agricultural water management solutions as drivers for agricultural growth in the continent. These were the prompts that made us at the Commission to decide on how do we leverage on this to provide support to member states by developing this framework. So on the issue of high climatic variability, I think it was Leah also stated this in her presentation, the high climatic variability and the associated issues of aridity, low productivity, hunger. These are things that stares us at the continent and also emphasizes the need to really focus on how to use agricultural water management solution in improving agricultural production in the continent. Now the framework was produced in 2019. In last year, shortly before the corona epidemic, It was endorsed by the African Union Head of States as a continental blueprint. The framework is what we are seeing on the right of the screen. The purpose of this framework was to provide support to member states so as to review and to design for those that already have to review and those that don't have to design their own agricultural water management strategies. And the need for this was to align development efforts towards their implementation. The framework also aimed to stimulate interest in irrigation and agricultural water management efforts in the continent. The framework is divided in 3 sections, in 3 chapters. Chapter 1 addressed the issues of the context, the rationale, the methodology that was used in the development. Chapter 2 look at opportunities and challenges in irrigation development and agricultural water management solutions in the continent. It looks at lessons learned in previous attempts to develop irrigation. Chapter 3 actually provides the development pathways, which we call the suite of development options that member states will need to leverage on. We'll come to that later, and it ended with the conclusions and recommendations. Now, we'll be talking about irrigation. Well, the framework used the model of MODEM 2017 and actually look at the whole water management spectrum from the green water, what we call the green water. These are purely rain-fed development efforts, to the fully irrigated, which is the blue water. The difference, we'll see that later, the pure green water, there is no water conveyance. It's just feed management of rainfall. And the reason for this, for highlighting this in the framework, is also what has been said by the previous speaker, that most of the agricultural production in the continent is actually rain-fed. So we should not leave that. We also see how we can improve on that through feed conservation practices. Then the framework also addressed the issues of pure irrigation, which are fully irrigated from blue water abstractions and the various typologies. This is the pathway 1. Pathway 1 is actually improved water control under watershed management. Like I said, this is purely rain-fed. What the framework addresses here is how to manage rainfall agriculture to ensure that for the time you have it, you're able to utilize it efficiently and to maximize productivity at the farm level. The rationale for this is addressed in the framework. And I've said it, over 80% of farm production is in the continent is still under rain-fed agriculture. The framework also addresses sustainability proposals to ensure that rain-fed agriculture is sustainable. The rainfall address issues relating to the institutional reforms that are necessary. It looks at the technical reforms that are necessary, financial reforms that are necessary. These are all in the framework. I don't want to go deep into that. I'll share the link for the framework later. So this is pathway 1, which is purely improved water control under rain-fed agriculture. Pathway 2, which is the development part option 2, look at the now popular farmer-led irrigation process. It's actually a process. This is the fastest growing irrigation expansion scheme in the continent. It is purely market-driven. It is farmers-owned and farmer-operated. The rationale for including this in the framework, or for highlighting this as a development option, is stated clearly in the framework. Like I said, it is the fastest growing irrigation scheme in the continent. It easily integrated into existing smallholder practices. It can incorporate multiple cropping, and the technologies involved are easy to use and farmer friendly. The framework also addressed the sustainability proposal to ensure that this farmer-led irrigation process is sustainable. It looks at the technical changes that need to be made, institutional reforms that are needed, as well as issues of legal and standard issues that need to be taken into consideration to ensure that the farmer-led irrigation process is optimally used at the member state level. Pathway 3 look at the large-scale irrigation scheme, and I think I was listening to Leah that most of these large-scale irrigation schemes, they are public-driven. Product efficiency is very low. Most of them are just moribund, operating below capacity. But then they involved huge capital we spent on them, huge money was spent on. So there's a need to renovate some of them and to ensure that they are performing at least, if not at optimal level, but at a high level that farmers can use. So this is pathway 3. The framework addressed this pathway. You look at the rationale for it and the sustainability factor. What need to be done to ensure that this pathway, this development option is sustainable at the farmers level. Pathway 4, this is the unconventional water use. It's also becoming very common, especially in peri-urban agriculture. Most times, wastewaters from houses and industries are used by peri-urban agriculture to provide additional water to crops. It's an attempt to use water leakages, wastewaters from homes, that there's a need to reuse and recycle this water. But then there are a lot of ethical issues, and the framework addresses the issue of safety guidelines in using this water as irrigation. There are issues of campaign also that need to be put in place to ensure that this is accepted not only by the farmers, but also by the consumers of this produce. So this is pathway 4. These are the 4 pathways that the framework addressed. Then there's the framework also had these 7 cross-cutting issues, from issues of inclusivity to data. And I'm also happy that when Jamie was presenting the last slide, he talked about the importance of government. Yes, there's the role for government in all this. It should not just be the farmers alone. So the understanding of the framework was that the member states are actually, they are sovereign states. The African Union, what we do is just prescriptive at this level. We encourage them to uptake most of these things we are saying, but then it has to be done in line with their specific peculiarities. So this is the understanding of the framework. There's high demand for irrigation in the continent. There are similarities in most of these countries in terms of what is actually needed, either in terms of water use or in terms of the technology. And that member states have the right to decide their own development agenda. Now, the 4 pathways, just in conclusion, the 4 pathways that are presented, they are not mutually exclusive. There is nothing in the framework that says a country should adopt one. It is possible to have mixtures of them, either at the urban or in the rural environment. So this is the framework. This is the African Union framework. I will hang around to take questions that will come up from this. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mure, for that insightful presentation and unpacking the framework related to irrigation in the continent. It's very key, and you can already see that the TISA interventions have been responding to some of these pathways or contributing to these pathways in terms of ensuring that the farmers are leading the process. The farmers are part of the conversation. There's management of water resources in an efficient manner. The part where Jamie then brings up the issue of circularity, circular systems is very key as well, feeding into the last part where we are also recycling water, making sure that there's a conventional water use as well that we are tapping into. That's a very important part. Ethical issues taken into consideration, safety issues taken into consideration as well. Thank you very much again, Mure. May I take this opportunity to invite Dr. Inga. Dr. Inga is the regional representative at the International Water Management Institute, and she has vast experience in water governance, the nexus issues that Dr. Matsivandila highlighted earlier, water, energy, food nexus, and we are honored to have her today to highlight some of the key issues in terms of the importance of irrigation in the Southern African region. Dr. Inga, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Nyoni, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone on the call. I hope you can hear me. My internet is a little bit unstable today, so forgive me if I don't share the camera. But good to be here, and really interesting to hear, how a program like TISA is aligned to the AU's development approach as well. Maybe just to start by, and I'll keep my comments brief, just to reiterate some of the points that the previous speakers made. I think it's important to note that this region, Southern Africa, still relies very much on rain-fed farming. More than 90% of agricultural activities depends on rain-fed farming. In terms of freshwater resources, there's about 77% or so available to agricultural activities, but the investments in harnessing it are minimal. We know, previous speakers have also said that irrigation is underutilized in the region. It accounts for only about 7%, with variation, of course, across countries. And we have seen some progress in some countries, but there is more that can be done. And I come from the CGIAR, where we often talk about Southern Africa being a climate hotspot, and because of the changes to the growing season by the end of the century, current farming practices will not be feasible or possible. So there is, this dire need for us to transform food systems, as the speakers have also alluded to, expansion of irrigation could be very helpful in reducing this year-to-year variability and increasing yields. Interestingly, the SADC Regional Strategic Indicative Development Plan, while previous drafts have prioritized an irrigation target, the current one doesn't. And we can have a separate discussion about whether or not this means that we need to re-articulate a high-level policy objective, at the RSDIP level. But I think the region has put in place mechanisms such as the regional agriculture policy, the regional agriculture investment plan, priority programs that are meant to operationalize this expansion of irrigation and transformation, I guess, of irrigation management in the region. At IMI, we have been working to support SADC countries in the biennial review reporting process through the Regional Strategic Analysis and Knowledge Support System, RESACS, with partners such as IFPRI and now Academia 2063. And really what RESACS is trying to do is to support, the implementation of CAADP by providing policy relevant data, facilitating dialogue among stakeholders, monitoring progress in reviewing goals, and also strengthening this mutual accountability processes at continental, regional, and national levels. So I think much like TISA, it's been a long-term effort of almost 15 years. And that's why I bring it up, because I think what is so commendable about TISA is that it has been this continuous effort over time. And we see with irrigation management that it does require that concerted effort, not just a projectized approach, but this long-term commitment by government and partners. Another thing I'd like to just speak about is just some of the lessons that we're picking up in another initiative, a CGIAR initiative, where we are currently working to accelerate the impact of the CGIAR's climate research in Africa. And it focuses on 3 pillars. It focuses on enhancing the delivery of climate information services. It focuses on scaling actionable climate smart agricultural innovations and practices, such as some of those discussed in the TISA program, and then strengthening partnerships for delivery. Now, what we're seeing through this project is the benefit of a value chain approach. So bringing together, irrigation management with other value chain efforts, really looking at the role of water in transforming our ag value chains, from the farm system to the landscape system as well. So coupling the scaling of technologies and management practices with regenerative agriculture and methods to restore and conserve land and water management. And what we are seeing more and more is the need to think about scaling out, scaling up, but also scaling deep. And that is about how do we tackle the norms, the collective understandings of different partners. And so, just drawing my comments to a conclusion, while I emphasize the need, for robust policy at the highest level, at the SADC level, and the need for a shared vision for irrigation, I think bottom-up efforts are equally important. Bottom-up efforts like TISA that also help build that shared vision, which really, I think, builds this foundation relying on strong partnerships, and, as I said before, continuous efforts over time. And I think it's about really bringing these two together, Dr. Nyoni, these, seeing transformative change on the ground, and then providing the enabling environment to ensure that it can be scaled. And critical to this is for governments, I think, to see farming communities as partners, not only as beneficiaries. So really thinking about a new kind of partnership model with farming communities. And that's really the scaling deep that I think is so important, changing the norms, the collective understandings, both from within government, but also within farming communities. I hope that was okay, Dr. Nyoni. I'll leave it at that. Back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was more than okay. That was actually perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Inga, for that. I like the scaling out, scaling up, and also making sure that we scale deep. I think that's very profound, and having those relationships from the ground, as well as from the decision-making processes, the policy development processes, creating that enabling environment so that we have the transformation of irrigation systems in the region. I think that was really, really wonderful. Thank you so much for those reflections, those remarks. I will hand over to my colleague. I'd like to invite my colleague Thembi to take us through the program henceforth. Thembi, over to you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to all the presenters that have spoken, and to Dr. Inga for those reflections. I think at this point in time, we are now going to get into discussions. Everyone is going to have an opportunity to participate. I see that from the chat, there's been a lively discussion that has been going on, and I'm hoping that this is going to carry on into the next step. We are now going to be breaking out into 3 different groups. We have organized these groups according to the countries, specifically focusing on the 3 countries that the TISA project is being implemented in. But this doesn't mean that regional players or colleagues from other countries are not welcome. Please just select one country. I know that when you were registering for the webinar, it asked which country you'd like to be in. Please just choose one country where you will participate. We have Mozambique. That group is going to be facilitated by engineer Delphine Vossier, who is the Director General at the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in Mozambique. We have breakaway session B, which is the Tanzania group, is going to be facilitated by Ms. Vivian Kasi, who is the FANAPA node coordinator in Tanzania. Then we have group C, and it's going to be Group Zimbabwe. It's going to be facilitated by Dr. Isaiah Marapara, a member of the FANAPA node in Zimbabwe. So in this group, we are hoping that we are going to do what Dr. Inga spoke about, discuss how we can scale deep, how we can scale out, and how we can scale up. And I am hoping that we will have fruitful deliberations. But before we send you to your groups, we would like to memorialize this event today. We have quite a number of participants, 87 participants, according to my last count, and would like to make sure that we capture everyone's face who has been part of this meeting. So at this point, I would like to ask that we turn on our cameras for a quick smile and photo session before we go to the groups. It's so good to see so many friends, so many familiar faces. Everyone is looking beautiful and handsome. Thank you. Kanto, you're going to count us down?
All right. Thank you, everyone. It's gonna take 3 seconds. Please smile and turn on your camera. We have so many participants today, so we have Thank you, Tembi. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kanto. At this point, you are going to be sent into the breakaway groups. Kanto, if you could facilitate that. For those that selected, you'll automatically go to the group that you have chosen. Those that did not select will be assigned a group at this point. So just give us 2 minutes as we sort out the breakout groups. Thank you.
All right, so based on your choice, you will see the invitation. Please join that group, that invitation, everyone.
Can I just confirm that if we are still here, does it mean we're in group A or group B or group C?
There is the name of the groups. Okay. Okay, so you will see the Please click on the breakout room, the 4 square down on the bottom right. Or if you're not invited, you can choose with breakout room, but you have been assigned to the group that you have chosen as well. Thank you.
Hi, Kanto. I'm unable to see the breakout room link.
It's not a link. It's are you able to see which group did you choose? Chikondi?
Sorry, I'm having a problem to connect to my breakout room. I'm supposed to be in the Mozambican breakout room, but
All right, we will assign you Miguel. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Hello, sorry, Kanto, I'm also facing some problems in signing to the group.
You haven't received
yeah,
okay.
I haven't received anything, and the Tanzanian group.
Which group you are? Kamwesiwe?
Tanzania.
Have you received the invitation? Now.
Hey, Kanto, could you also please send me to the Tanzania group?
Okay.
Hi, Kanto. May you please send me to the Mozambique group?
Sorry, who is speaking?
Busiso.
Oh, okay. All right. Noted.
Hi, I'm
Hello, Kant. Can you send me to the Zimbabwe group, please? Thank you.
Noted, Davidson. Yes, I think we're facing a bit of challenges where people cannot see the invitation. Yes, this is noted. We will send you.
Yes, Ale, can you send me to the Zimbabwe group?
All right. Have you received the invitation?
Would you also send Brian to?
Sorry, Brian, where is your group? Emmy, which group are you? Sibosiso, haven't you received the invitation?
I haven't received the invitation yet.
Good morning and welcome back to the main plenary. We are just waiting for everyone else to come back to join us so that we can proceed with the next segment of the program. Welcome back.
Hi, we're back.
Thank you, Dr. Marafara. I think we are all here now and we can proceed with the next part of the program. I do trust that you all had exciting presentations and deliberations, and we are going to hear all about that in a minute. We have asked Andrew Takawira, who is the Senior Technical Advisor at the Global Water Partnership Africa Coordination Unit, to give us his reflections before we can sort of get into individual country reflections. So at this time, I would like to invite Andrew to just come on board and give us his reflections. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Tembi. I'll just try and quickly share my screen. And I hope you can hear me and see my screen.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you and we can see your screen. You can just go into presentation mode.
All right. Is it in presentation mode now?
Yes, it's in presentation mode now. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so thank you very much. What I've just tried to do, and thank you for inviting me to this very interesting session. And what I've just tried to do and reflecting on what I was hearing, I think something that, really, caught my ears was a statement that was made in the Zimbabwean session that technical fixes will not work alone as irrigation systems are complex. And this really describes how I've kind of reflected the different types of investments that we need to think about in terms of increasing the quality and quantity of these investments in order to improve and sustain the performance of the agriculture sector. As we have heard, the Southern Africa, performance, is below par, and then there's need to think around how we can do this. So, from the discussions, I sort of picked up what I would term the 6 I's. The first 3 I's on the right are usually shared by the World Bank, but I've included the other 3 on the left. So the first one is around infrastructure. I think there was a lot that was discussed around expanding irrigation. So we really need those investments to continue. 90%, as Inga said, of the region is using rain-fed agriculture. So there is a case for expanding our irrigation in the region. So infrastructure investments become very, very critical. I think the issue of information, investments in information came up in different sort of dialogues and shapes and forms, coming up with improving access of information for the smallholder farmers, information on technologies. I think there was a lively discussion in the chat around even where do we get these technologies, and that information was shared, farming practices, efficiency in irrigation, water management, climate information systems. So all these are sort of different types of information that is really needed, and we need to invest in ensuring that this information is made available. And then there was a talk around the institutional investments, and I think this was an area, I think, that goes back to where I started around these technical fixes will not work alone. But I think the issue of the agriculture information platforms around these institutional investments becomes key. Policy development, institutionalization of practices, I think was something that was also discussed. How do we ensure that farmers continue to use these practices? The issue of institutional and capacity development, the issue of self-organization, visioning, all these issues, I think, become very critical, and we have to invest in these if we want to sustain the performance of the agriculture sector. And I think key and interesting was the point that Inga also raised around scaling deep. My first time to hear this, but I think this is really goes to how we need to address those norms, and building those partnerships between government and farmers really becomes critical in this scaling deep. So I think very interesting, and I think investments are also needed in that regard. The issue of inclusiveness, I think, very key, and I think this is where the agriculture sector plays a critical role in us also achieving our sustainable development goals, so that we leave no one behind. How do we, have investments that ensure that women and youth are empowered and they're vulnerable, that there's gender equity in leadership and there's gender equality. So this is very key. And I think we already saw that from some of the results coming out of the work that was presented. We could already see that the issue of gender equity was being addressed. So, but how do we sustain these investments? I think these are investments that need to be sustained. So more of this, and we need to ensure that we increase our investments in this area as well. The issue of integration, I think there are a number of processes and approaches that we know. I think IWRM, Integrated Water Resources Management, is such one that promotes an integrated approach to water resources management and development. And the organization that I work for, Global Water Partnership, has really been driving issues of IWRM. And this is key in how our water resources are managed and sustained. So investments also in promoting this approach. And there was talk around the WEF, the water, energy, food, but I would like to add the ecosystem there, because it's critical that we also invest in sustaining the ecosystem, which is the provider of the resources that we use for water, energy, and food, land, So very critical that in this nexus, when we're investing, we also bring in the issue of ecosystems. And then the last one is innovation. I think very critical in driving forward. So the issue of research to drive this innovation becomes very key. And this is an area of investments that we need to think about. So the circular food systems, we discuss crop livestock interaction, technologies to improve water use, innovations that can be driven through the AIP, the Agriculture Innovation Platform. I think all these become very key investments that also need to be made in innovation. So I'll leave you with these 6 I's. And also just to say, as the Global Water Partnership, we are working very closely with AUDA in a program called the Africa Water Investment Program. And I think it was quite interesting to see some points of linking here. So I will definitely follow up with you, Tembi, and the FANAPAN friends on this work. But thank you very much, and I will end here.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for your reflection, for pointing us to the 6 I's, and for just emphasizing the need to increase the quantity and quality of investments that improve and sustain the performance of the agriculture sector. I think it's very important, especially in the context of the Malabo Declaration as well of CAADP. So at this point, we are now going to go into the report back session to hear what was presented in the groups, what was discussed, some points of convergence, some points of discussions that were raised. If you allow me, we will take it in alphabetical order. We'll start off with Mozambique. And I believe that for Mozambique, we have Professor Joao Mutondo reporting back to us. After Mozambique, I will ask Tanzania, Mr. Abel Songola to get ready, and then we'll end with Zimbabwe. I understand Mr. Tabani Dube is the one who's going to be reporting back. So let me hand over to Prof. Joao. Please go ahead and share with us the Mozambique discussions. Highlights, please. Just a 5-minute overview summary of the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tembe. I will be really highlights of what we discussed in our breakout session. Mozambique, we agreed that this country is vulnerable to climate change and disasters. And also we have problem of underperformance of the irrigation schemes. We think that these did a good job here in Mozambique. I think the previous presenters also said about the soil monitoring tool, as well as the establishment of the agri-innovation platform. That was also done in Mozambique. Actually, because of the project which was implemented in Maputo and Manica, Maputo province and Manica, farmers were able to be linked to input credit providers as well as extension service. And also those farmers that were involved are now having access to quality inputs, which is good for Mozambique. As a result of those interventions, the income of farmers has increased, and the result here is about 38 to 48% of farmers increase the income. But we have a huge increase of income, about 83% in this 25th September irrigation scheme. And also 67% of farmers said that the project helped to improve their food security. And because of that, we believe that the project helped to contribute to the ending hunger and halve the poverty. Those are the issues that the Malabo Declaration is mandating the member state to work on. On discussion, actually, we discussed how to scale out, up, and deep. There are several issues that we discussed, and I summarized them in 5 points. The first point is incorporation of those technologies, those sustainable technologies in our plans. I think there's a need of government commitment to incorporate those technologies and promote the establishment and operationalization of those technologies. So that's one recommendation that we think that will help for scaling out, up, and deep. The second issue that we recommend is Mozambique's training farmers. We believe that through training farmers, the farmers will be sustainable, we can empower them, and when we have the farmers sustainable and empowered, then they can move by themselves, so they can implement the technology and be sustainable over time. And the third point that we think that is good for scaling out, up, and deep is to operationalize the irrigation nuclear. Here in Mozambique, we have a setup of decentralized irrigation, I would say irrigation management, and we have those nucleus, irrigation nucleus, different parts of the country. And I think if we operationalize those nucleus, will be a center for the discussion of the technologies as well as the innovation platform, which can help to scale out and up to different farmers in the country. The fourth point that we discussed, and I have noted here, is the establishment and operationalization of unified integrated extension services. So extension services should not be only for like crop production, should be for the value chain as a whole, including also issue regarding to irrigation and as well as fisheries, forestry, and marketing, and so on. So we think that if you have these unified integration extension services, through that one, we can discuss issues related to irrigation and also help to scale up the technologies that were developed here to the farmers. Lastly, but not the least, is the dissemination of the existing irrigation norms, rules for the irrigation scheme management. So the rules are there. How things should be done also we have written our policy documents. But what we can see is people, farmers are not aware of those norms, those rules. And we think that if we disseminate them, including also or complemented with the dissemination of the technologies that we have proven here to be competing in the sense of improving the livelihood of the farmers, that can also help to scale out, up, and deep the results of this project. So this is what I was able to capture on my side as a reporter. But I can invite my colleagues that were also in the group to add if there's something that I couldn't capture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Mutondo. I think your colleagues can maybe add some points in the chat if there's anything that you missed out, but that was quite a comprehensive summary, I think, of, I'm sure, what was a long discussion. Now I would like to head over to Tanzania, and I would like to invite Mr. Abel Songole to feedback to us the discussion from Team Tanzania.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tembi. Our discussion dwelt on the presentation from Dr. Makario Simdem, who presented on the results from the TISA project that is implemented in Iringa region, where more than 30 beneficiaries have been benefiting from the projects. On the results, he said that the tools, introduction of the tools has aided in monitoring the water moisture and nutrients of the soil, and thus reduced the irrigation frequencies to farmers. As a result, in turn, it has saved water use and the labor that the farmers are being spent in irrigating their crops. It has also increased the efficiency in fertilizers use and also increased the incomes for households. Regarding the agricultural innovation platforms, he said that that has increased the interaction and the networking among farmers to access inputs and the markets. Generally, he said that the reduction of irrigation frequencies, he also reported the reduction of irrigation frequencies by 42% of their time, which they used to irrigate before they decided to use the tools. And that reduction has resulted in social and household water use conflicts, which before farmers have been competing on the use of the scarce water resources that they used to have. So generally, I concluded that the tools and the innovation platform has improved food security, improved productivity and the incomes of the households. Yeah. So after hearing the presentations, we went to discuss on what has been presented, and our discussions were guided by the 3 items. The gaps, again, we discussed on the opportunities, and then we ended with the next steps. On the gaps, we have seen that most of the investment directed in small-scale irrigation schemes actually lack technical and institutional mechanisms. And again, on the gaps, we have seen that the import taxes and the fees that are charged on the imported tools some are high, and they used to hinder the use of it by smallholder irrigation farmers. On the opportunities, we say that there is an opportunity for converting the high productivity to higher profitability that will enable farmers to pay for water and the inputs, and again maintain the schemes. On the next steps, we saw that there's a need to sustain irrigation systems so as to achieve and maintain food security and improved viability for all households and the schemes. Again, we have seen the need for the government to set aside funds for tools to aid the water use in an efficient and effective manner. And lastly, we ended by saying that there's a need to provide farmers with an access to tools so that they can efficiently and effectively use water and monitor the soil nutrients. Yeah, that's what I have noted from our discussions. So I end up here and I welcome my fellow group members who were in the same breakout sessions to add anything if they have. And that
Thank you so much, Abel, for that feedback. And I welcome your group members to just drop the additional points that they may want to raise in the chat group so that we can now move on to the final feedback that we're going to receive from Zimbabwe, the group that was meeting to discuss the Zimbabwe case. I understand Demisani is the one who is going to be feeding back to us, no? Is it Tabiso?
It should be Tabani.
Tabani, all right. Thanks, Tabani. Please go ahead, my apologies.
Thank you very much. I'll make a presentation on the discussions that took place in the Zimbabwe group. Our discussions followed the presentation by Dr. Martin. The presentation highlighted the challenges that the smallholder sector is currently facing, the fact that it's performing well below potential, contributing minimal to the national economy. It highlighted a number of barriers to irrigation development, which included the land tenure, the infrastructure and equipment, market and the market barriers, and also barriers related to production and water productivity issues. The presentation then highlighted what TISA project has been trying to achieve to address some of these challenges, indicating that the project was split into two phases, with the 2013 to 17 period.
You have muted yourself, Tabani. Please unmute and continue with your feedback.
Okay. So yeah, so I was saying that the presentation indicated that TISA project, which is split into two parts, the first being the proof of concept phase that took place from 2013 to 2017, and the second phase, the scaling out phase from 2017 to 21, as an attempt to address some of the barriers that was highlighted in the presentation. So we had the feedback on the results or the evidence from the first phase, the proof of concept, which showed that there has been behavior change among the irrigators, and this has seen profitability and the improvement in productivity as a result of reduced use of water, together with the tools that the chameleon and the full stop. The project also was promoting the use of AIPs in terms of bringing together stakeholders to address some of the key challenges that are found in the sector, which include the issues related to market participation. And we had the presentation showing us some of the changes that were happening in some of the schemes where the fixed cropping patterns were seen to be changing. In addition to the presentation, we had a discussion that followed that presentation. First of all, there was the issue of where the tools could be accessed. And it was mentioned that the tools are available in Pretoria at the moment, with efforts to allow private sector participation in terms of manufacturing local level still underway. Then there was also a question around how TISA is interacting with other large irrigation projects within the country in its endeavor to scale out the tools. And it was mentioned that already discussions with government and the other major projects like the IFAD project in the country are ongoing to reach more schemes, more than the 40 that are currently covered. Some of the schemes that are being covered at the moment are beyond the TISA project, but as a result of the project interacting with other development agencies that are implementing irrigation projects within the country. Then also we had an issue on the role of government in terms of promoting the scaling out of the tools. And it was mentioned that the government was a very key stakeholder in terms of ensuring the sustainability of such interventions. And as TISA, we're already working with the government through various departments within government, which has seen also the project training some of these colleagues from government in different areas of the project is pursuing, like the tools and the AIP. When the discussion was about to actually pick up, it seems time was not on our side. We went, one of key government actors was about to make his contribution. We found ourselves back to the plenary. So basically, from the presentation, the evidence that the projects have achieved, we had that discussion around those issues that I've mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tabani, for that feedback. I'm just wondering, the government official that was about to make his contribution, we have just about 10 minutes before we have to wrap up. Was that Basil who was going to come in?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Basil, I think I can give you an opportunity to quickly just highlight a few things that you had wanted to bring up in the group. And then I will also be taking 3 hands of people that want to maybe contribute something, clarify something. So if you can just raise your hand so that we can note you and able to unmute you. Right now, I'll hand over to Basil.
Well, thank you for the time slot. I was going to, congratulate my colleagues from ICRISAT, the local office in Zimbabwe, which Dr. Moyo and team are actually assisting us in terms of the rollout strategy. But just to mention that, yes, we are working together, and parallel to that, through the VIA, we are also in the process of deploying, a number of sensors to irrigation schemes outside the provinces under which the TISA programming has been focusing on. Because visually they were working mostly in Matabeleland North and Matabeleland South. Even the other local, NGOs that have been also complementing the same effort have been also working in the same province. So as a department, as government, we're actually rolling out, we've got about 900 sensors that we are actually in the process of deploying. And we are in the process of, continuous capacity building of our extension workers to ensure that there is a sustained and continuous, usage of mostly the sensors in the area of irrigation water management. And more earlier, alluded to, we are in the process of trying to find out how we can, avoid duplication of effort and resources by pulling together stakeholders from the sector, both from government and also from the NGO fraternity, to make sure that we rationalize our efforts to redirect ourselves so that people can focus in areas where others are not necessarily also focusing on, to avoid crowding of efforts and crowding of resources in a specific area. And that seems to be yielding a lot of results and seems to be giving us a lot of positive feedback, especially from the stakeholders in the farming community. Those are my general comments, in line with the discussion that we were, having exchanges on within the Zimbabwe group. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Basil, for those comments. I see Mr. Elisha Bakuza's hand is up. I will hand over to him. I am not seeing any more hands. So is there anyone else that would want to come in? Perhaps we can have a comment from someone from Mozambique, and then a comment from someone from Tanzania, and then we can wrap it up. So let me give to, okay, I see Andre's hand is up as well. So I will also invite Andre. So let's start with Elisha, and then after Elisha, we'll go to Andrew. Unmute yourself, please, Elisha, and go ahead.
Thank you very much for the good presentation. One of my observation is about the sustainability of the technology, that it needs the capacity building, especially on part of the stakeholders along the value chain of irrigation, that the tools and equipments should be maintained at a local level in a particular country, although they imported from the other country, so that farmers will be actually not spending much on importation cost together with the maintenance cost by requiring somebody to come and do some kind of maintenance. It also requires a partnership between the government officials and the private sector, especially the research institutes should be involved. For example, in Tanzania, we have got TARI. TARI as the Tanzania Agricultural Research Institute, that is mandated for agricultural research, to be one of the collaborative institutions, as far as it is actually in close contact with the farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Elisha. Andre, over to you.
Thanks, Timmy. Just a few very quick points. Scaling is paramount in projects like this, and the role governments play, and as we've seen in Zimbabwe, if you do not have engagement from several government organizations or government sectors, you're not going to succeed. So in Zimbabwe, thanks to the government, we've done exceptionally well. But what we need to do, not only in Zimbabwe, but in many other countries, is to get the private sector involved, both in the supply of the tools and also in absorption of increased yields and products that come out of these schemes. Because we've seen in the chat box that money is what drives farmers' motivations. And if we cannot get the private sector, both on the input and the output side, working with us, we will not succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre, for that comment. I think I am going to request, is there any colleague from Mozambique that wants to come in? No? Oh, okay. There's, I think it's Dakwa Bashir. His hand is up. You are going to be our last speaker. Oh, okay. Mario's hand is up again. So let me have Mr. Bashir, and then I'll have Mario after that, and then we can close.
All right. Thank you very much. What I wanted to say has already been highlighted by Andrew. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Dakius Bashir from Malawi. I'm working for Concern Worldwide, and I'm also the board member for CESANET. I wanted to agree with Andre that we need to bring in private investments. But these private investments should come in a different way, because if you see our smallholder farmers, they're over 80% in our different countries. And these smallholder farmers are the ones which drives the agricultural sector, and they're the ones who are going to push this agenda of ending hunger by 2025. But now, what is the best way? How best can we ensure that these irrigation strategies and schemes, they are effective and they have led to a tremendous impact at the ground level? So one of our challenges that we mostly have is that lack of ownership. Most of us, most of the farmers lacks ownership when these projects are coming into their hands. So they just look at it as a fund project or as a government project. They don't own it. So that is the biggest challenge that we should also striving to solve. During the first opening remarks by the CEO of Fanaban, he said we need systems thinking. Systems thinking is a key role, is a key aspect that can help us solve this problem. So because we'll be able to identify what are the factors that influence the environment and this complex system, and how do we strategize in a better way so that we have to reach out with these smallholder farmers with these irrigation techniques. And again, how do we test this hypothesis and learn from it, because things will keep on changing each and every day. How do we leverage the system and continue to learn and adapt the new system as it changes? So by tackling these changes, we'll be able to impact the bottom line. And not only that, if we talk about private investments, it has to be a cost-sharing private investment. If we are bringing in private investment, it shouldn't just be a private investor comes in, invest the technologies and all that, but it has to be a cost-sharing platform between the smallholder farmers and this private investor over a specific period of years to ensure sustainability. For example, if the investment agreement, you establish an agreement between the smallholder farmers and the private investor for 5 years, and over these 5 years, the private investor transfers skills and knowledge and builds capacity of these smallholder farmers, so that after 5 years, when the contract ends, when the private investor is going away, this smallholder farmer has got the necessary knowledge, has got the skills to run this irrigation scheme, and has developed an sense of ownership and a sense of ownership and belonging to all these projects. Then in that way, things will work out. Because it's also hard, again, just to bring in donors to invest in the technologies. Yeah? But social enterprises would be the best, because they will also earn something, the investors themselves. They invest in something, it's the business, they earn something, and they co-share it with the smallholder farmers. Yeah, so I think that would be the best, one of the best approaches, ensuring that we have to achieve a meaningful impact at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments and for just emphasizing the need for private investment into these things. Let me quickly give to Mario and then we can close. Mario, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much and good morning to everyone. Well, let me not repeat myself, but maybe to emphasize that also in Mozambique, the issue of ownership of an intervention by farmers is also a key aspect here that we have to see. What is important here is actually the farmers to recognize the usefulness of the technologies that are being, transferred to them. And coming to the technology side and talking about the tools, for instance, two aspects there also that we need to consider. And of course, is the involvement of private sector, to make them available, the continuous technical support to farmers. What we have realized in the field is that whenever intervention starts and there is a sudden stop of this support, then farmers tend to drop the initiative. So we need to find a sort of irrigation development models also that bring this aspect of continuous technical support to farmers. Of course, not neglecting the importance of the AIPs for the success of an intervention. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mario. Thank you to everybody that has contributed. I am also seeing that the chat is very active. Important points that are also being raised in the chat. At this point, I think we have come to the end of our program. From the discussions, it is clear that there's huge potentials for the agriculture sector on the continent to furnish sustainable and improved livelihoods, but also to achieve some of the overall economic development goals that as a continent we have. And irrigation is key if we are to do that. So we know that building resilient capacities in agriculture livelihoods, which irrigation is really a strong component of, is key to achieving the development goals that have been put forth through the Agenda 2063 and also through the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So let us continue to work together to make sure that we drive change and we make sure that we enable our farmers to have access to tools and other equipment that they may need to improve their irrigation management practices. At this point, I would like to thank everybody that has participated in this webinar. I would especially like to recognize the Australian government, the Australian Centre for International Agriculture Research that supports the TISA project. I would like to recognize the Australian National University, RD University in Tanzania, the Institut Nacional de Irrigación, I think in Mozambique, INIR. I'd also like to recognize ICRISAT, our partners in Zimbabwe. Also recognize the University of South Australia and the CSIRO, our partners in this project. Thank you so much to our keynote speaker from the African Union Commission for highlighting to us and setting the scene in as far as irrigation sits within the Malabo Declaration. We'd also like to thank Dr. Inga Jacobs-Masha from the International Water Management Institute. We thank also Mr. Andrew Takawira from the Global Water Partnership for their contribution. Most importantly, I would like to thank the country partners that really did drive the breakout sessions, those that made the presentations, those that facilitated, and those that captured the discussions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope that we all will continue the discussion and we'll continue engaging with the TISA program. But also we've heard of opportunities of new initiatives that are being implemented by different partners. Let's all keep engaged. I also like to thank my colleague, Dr. Njongenhle Nyoni, who has been very instrumental in pulling this together. And I'd like to thank the FANAPAN technical team as well that has been responsible as well for making sure that the webinar runs smoothly. From me, ladies and gentlemen, many thanks. Let's hope to connect again soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Tembi.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Hi, Tembi.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Hope to see you again.
Goodbye.
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 Thank you. Goodbye. Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.